Do you want
Welcome
me to
to.
start?
Oh no, it's okay.
No? Sorry, anchor's mentality. Right.
No, that's all
Uh,
good. Welcome to Discussions on Discord, thanks to Lenovo Legion. This is a video series where I get to chat with interesting people working in the games industry. And today I am talking to Pete Curulli. Welcome, Pete.
oh, hi. You mean me? Interesting. Hang on. Let's make sure that, no, I'm the only one here. Thank you. Thank you very much. How you going?
I'm great. It's great to talk to you.
Yeah, you too.
For those that don't know you, you've had a career in games journalism, in esports, in radio. It seems to me like you've managed to spread yourself across a pretty broad range of mediums. Was that a path you set yourself on intentionally, or did you initially have a different career in mind for yourself?
It all sort of started back with radio, and to be honest with you, I had absolutely no idea I wanted to do it. I first got into radio when I was 19, sort of 18, 19 thereabouts, and I was actually filleting fish. I was going to be a fishmonger in my in my family's business, the seafood store, and I was filleting fish. And on the radio one day, there was a little thing that popped up on a community radio station that I used to listen to called Groove, and it said, "We're looking for announcers, no experience necessary." So I said, "Okay, I'll give that a try." And I emailed them for 30 days straight, and finally got through. And um, at the age of 17, I somehow managed to find my way into doing a relationships show on a Sunday night called, and I can't believe I'm going to say this out loud, Giving It Up to Groove with PDC. Um, and we used to take text messages because we couldn't take phone calls because we were a community radio station. So, people used to send in their queries and all that sort of stuff. And that was my little foray into radio to begin with. And then that sort of opened me up to a world of content. And I've kind of just been saying yes to whatever lands on my desk ever since. And we've ended up here.
That's amazing. So, so you were giving out relationship advice?
Yes. As,
What
now let me
kinds of problems were you facing? This is crazy.
let me put this in perspective, right? So, I'm a 17-year-old kid. I had not had a relationship up until that point. I wasn't that particular time, I wasn't really anyone's type. Let's just throw that out there. So here I was. I could present, so that was enough for them. And the sort of things that I was giving advice on were sort of everything from people who were just going through your stock standard breakup to people who were confessing that they were cheating on their partner. Because it was text message, and you got to remember. So I'm 36 this year. 17 was, it's going back 10 years ago now, and we didn't have, actually 20 years ago, Steph. Jesus, wow. Oh, that hurts to think about.
I'm the same age as you, so I'm trying to think about how I was at that age, and I definitely wasn't the kind of person that would have been giving out relationship advice. That's
Well,
for sure.
I'm not the sort of person who should have been giving out relationship advice, but somehow I found my way in there. And we would start the show off with a little warning saying this is not a psychologist giving out relationship. You should seek professional help and stuff like that. Because oddly enough, we actually used to get some really dark things that would come through
Sure,
because
that anonymity gives people sort of a bit more confidence to share
exactly
stuff.
right. That point that I was making before, it was text message. We didn't have social media at the time. It wasn't a thing. So, because of that anonymity, people just used to unload. I don't know if you've heard of it's a podcast these days and a little bit more, but there's somebody who a little while ago decided to mail out a heap of postcards anonymously with their address and just ask people to write their secret on it and send it back.
Oh,
You've
no,
never heard of this?
no, I haven't heard of this.
Oh, it's amazing. Google it. Have a look at it. It's incredible because it's blown up into this huge thing, and they would release it as a blog and this, that, and the other. But it was very much like that. People would just use it as an opportunity to air their dirty laundry because they felt safe and comfortable because they could do it anonymously. But as a 17-year-old, and a little while ago, I actually found some of the text messages going through an old box at mum and dad's house, and was going through them, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe we used to actually talk about this stuff on the radio. So Yeah, interesting stuff. But anyway, that's sort of where it all started. And like I said, you just keep saying yes to the things that come your way, and eventually you find your way. Well, me here.
Awesome. And do you get to bring your love of games into the radio work you do, or is it more about using those skills to elevate your other projects?
I have to pick and choose my moments.
Okay.
So it's funny because I will pitch a lot of games and esports stuff in the morning. So just to take you through it, we'll have our what's known as our pre-show meeting around about 20 past 5. Quite often I will come to them and I will say, oh, this amazing thing has happened in the Twitch world, or this amazing thing has happened in gaming, or someone just cracked the Super Mario 64 speed run world record. And you just see, and with respect to them, it's just not their thing. You just see their eyes glaze over as soon as I start to talk about it. And like this morning, for example, was a perfect example. And I'm wearing the jersey now. Pentanet.gg, which is the esports team that I manage, they broke out of groups for MSI. And it's the first time in Oceanic history that a team has done so. And I brought that to the table wearing this because I was doing bat flips walking into work this morning. And they were like, yeah, I don't know. But I picked my moment. We had a sports chat. We just cover the weekend in sport, and I kind of slipped the guy who comes in and does a sports chat with us at 20 and said, "Here, can you mention this?" And he brought it up. So we're all good. We're away.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like so much of what is covered about video games in broader mainstream media tends to be really sensationalist stuff. So you've got to try and like get those positive wins where you can.
Yeah, 100%. But that's the reality of it, isn't it? Because I mean, the most recent one that comes to mind is the Four Corners report that sensationalized the addiction side of gaming. And it's a thing, but it seems that any time mainstream media tends to come away with an angle to report on video games, it is that, and sensationalizing it is a perfect word that you used, because it is that headline that's going to draw people in. And it's usually, this young man just won millions in Fortnite. Or, gaming is addictive, which is unfortunate because, as you know, as somebody who's endemic to the space, has spent so much of your life in the space, there's so many more positive things that come out of gaming than negative.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think, it's that age-old thing of people just fearing what they don't understand. And
Mm,
so I think, I like to always call myself like an advocate for video games, which is like a weird title to give yourself. But in any kind of opportunity that I have to work outside of the sort of hardcore games industry, it's an opportunity to
yeah.
show people what's happening in terms of like really cool narrative choice in games or exciting things that are happening in indie development that just people never see. And I feel like bit by bit we'll get there and we'll convince them.
We will, and as long as you're committed to that, which you certainly are, and we as gamers and esports fans remain committed to that, and we keep pushing the positive stories. 100%, it'll break through. I mean, we've come a long way in mainstream media's uptake of gaming and esports in the last 12 to 18 months, particularly since COVID, than we have in the last decade.
Yeah, and I'll ask you a little bit more about Pentanet in a moment. But can you tell me a little bit about Game on Oz and how that came about?
It was an accident. That whole thing that I was saying about, just keep saying yes. My first breakfast radio gig was in Canberra, and the first person that I got to interview was Larry Emder, and that was his word of advice. It was, whatever comes your way, just keep saying yes. And Southern Cross Austereo, who I mentioned own the radio stations that I work for, around about 4 years ago, came to myself and the digital guy there. He calls himself Dan the Internet. And we met through a mutual love of video games, and we're the best of friends. It's the most heartwarming relationship you've ever seen, aside from myself and my wife. And they said to us, "Hey, would you put together a podcast?" Because at this stage, the network was investing in podcasting, and they went from what used to be Podcast One to now Listener. And they just wanted to know what a games podcast would sound like. And we're broadcasters and we love video games, so we could do it. So we decided to do that. And what ended up happening was we did one episode of 20 minutes and we sent it off to them and we didn't hear anything back. But we really enjoyed doing it. It was just a couple of blokes jumping on and banging on about games for 20 minutes. It was great. I mean, what's not to love? We just got to
Sure.
talk crap about games. And so we decided to do another one the following week, and then another one, and then another one. And we just kept going. And all of a sudden, it became less, in fact, nothing at all about, I wonder what the network's going to think about this and if they're going to pick it up, and more about, well, hang on, we're starting to discover that we can actually do this ourselves. The platforms and the opportunities are out there. So we're going to keep doing it. And now here we are 4 years down the track. We've got various podcasts, shows. We've got a Twitch stream team. We've got reviewers. We've got a core content team, and we've actually just launched a members benefits program where our members in the Discord have an opportunity to take on mentorship. So we're actually starting to mentor the esports fans. We're starting to mentor the content creators and streamers in terms of taking their content and their executions to another level, and it's really good.
It's awesome, dude. There's a lot of, I feel like the gaming community in Australia in particular is really enthusiastic. I'd say outside of the States, we have one of the most passionate gaming communities on the planet. But it is a competitive space to make gaming content. So how do you go about drawing audiences to the stuff that you make?
It's tough, and that's the God honest truth. We actually put Game on Australia up on blocks towards the end of last year and had a real good introspective look at ourselves, our content, and the content we're creating. Because what we were starting to discover was that as a fledgling organization in content here in Australia, quite often by covering things like AAA and Xbox, PlayStation, the big games, yes, it's important to cover that stuff, but if you make it your bread and butter, by the time we here in Australia have an opportunity to cover it and push it out, the actual games companies, the publishers, the developers, the platforms, your Xboxes, your PlayStations, they've already pushed out the information on their own socials. So we discovered, through getting our backsides kicked in terms of readership, that we were actually battling against the ones that we were working hard to cover. And the return just wasn't there. So what we started to do was we still covered it and we still are covering, but we are starting to maneuver the organization away from the AAAs and the big platforms that already have their own huge coverage and their own media teams and all of that. And we're starting to move it towards independent developers, where the new ideas are, the unique ideas are, the grassroots content creators, the grassroots indie developers, and all of that stuff. Because a couple of things are starting to happen. One, we're stumbling across new and awesome ideas, which are actually really interesting to write about. And two, we're picking up the readership by virtue of starting to build a community around these indie developers and the people who love their games. They need support. If it's anything that we've seen over the last sort of 18 months, really taking a closer look at them, they really do need the support. And there's some incredible games and developers out there. I mean, who knows where the next big ant is going to come from, or where the next house is going to come from, an Untitled Goose Game. I mean, to know that those are right here in Australia, it's something to be pretty proud of.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that's a great motivation to kind of, create a platform for those smaller titles as well, because I feel like they're always the ones that we have the most interesting discussions about. And people are always so delighted to discover smaller games that, they hadn't heard of.
Yeah, and you know your way around it. You've hosted various independent developer conferences, at PAX events, right? So you've seen that stuff firsthand. It is the exciting part of the industry. I mean, don't get me wrong, AAAs are amazing. There's so many awesome things that come out of playing AAA games, and it's where a lot of us have gotten our initial love and interest in games in the first place, those awesome first party IPs and AAA developments. But the new and unique and exciting ideas, the ones that can push the boundaries and try something new, they're coming out of the independent developer space.
Well, let's have a look at this kind of shift you had into esports management as well. I mean, tell me a little bit about Pentanet.gg and how you came to be involved.
Well, through Game on Australia, actually. So yeah, that whole saying about sort of people see amazing things happen, but haven't seen the work leading up to it, and the whole point of you make your own luck and you put yourself in those positions. I took on the general managership of Pentanet.gg by virtue of having built what we've built with Game on Australia. That's how, well, like, I got noticed and how the organisation got noticed. So I was lucky enough to sort of come through from that, and it snowballed from there. So Pentanet is it's a startup here in Perth. They do fixed wireless and NBN and all of that sort of stuff. And um, amazing story behind that as well. The managing director, Stephen, literally got the idea to start Pentanet because he was sick of the internet that he was playing League of Legends on. So most people complain.
He's like, if you
right?
want something done right, do it yourself.
He mortgaged his house and he built his first tower after testing the technology, and the technology worked. And then he went around sort of door knocking people in his area and signed them up to his tower. And then he went ahead and he did a capital raise, and they raised $3 million in their first round, and then started pumping things. And that's when he found me, because we just sort of started hearing about this Perth startup Pentanet with fixed wireless technology through gaming and also through the radio station. And he brought me in and he said, look, I've got this grand vision for esports on a bigger level in this country, but particularly starting here in Perth. And I want to know what you think. And we started throwing some ideas around. And the League of Legends team that we have now, Pentanet.gg, it wasn't always the plan. It was part of the plan. The plan was actually to start with grassroots esports through high schools and building it up through education and actually creating a professional pathway that way. But we reached out to League of Legends when it was part of the OPL at the time, the Oceanic Pro League, and just sort of flagged that we're interested in the space. And they said, look, we don't have anything going now, but if something happens down the track, we'll let you know. And it just so happened that in the end of 2019, we got a phone call from them, and they said that the Essendon Bombers, who had acquired an esports team at the time, were looking to get out. And we were like, okay, well, this is our opportunity, because it's one thing to put together a professional pathway, but if it sort of gets to here and then that's it, they've got nowhere else to go on to, then you don't really have much. Whereas we saw this as our opportunity to create a jewel in the crown and go, all right, like, you young people, if you want a professional career pathway in this, here is an opportunity right here in Perth that we can push out across the country as well and give you something to shoot for. And that's been the main aim and the main goal for the past 18 months now. 2020 was a good year. 2021 an even better year. And I'm wearing the jersey. It just so happens that we're on the day that, as I mentioned before, the boys did history. They made Oceanic Esports history and broke out of the group stage for the first time at an international event for Oceania. So I'm very proud. I've been up since 2:00 this morning. So a little earlier than breakfast radio hours and what I'm used to, but it's been worth it. I'm kind of running on fumes at the moment, but far out, what a day. It has been incredible.
Congratulations. That's amazing. And
You know where all of our fans have come from? I kid you not. Brazil. Brazil, for some reason, has gone, we love PGG. We're jumping on PGG's train. And all of these people, and I don't speak Brazilian. I hope that's the right
Portuguese.
language. Portuguese. Thank you very much. I don't speak Portuguese, but you can just feel the love coming through Twitter. So it's very cool.
And so what's involved in esports management? What are the ages of the esports competitors that you're managing? How are you kind of guiding them through this process? Where do you even start?
I sort of come at it from the angle of being almost like a father figure to the boys. I don't know League of Legends. I'm not a player. I tried playing it a couple of times years ago. I got my backside handed to me. I was like, this game's not for me. Then I discovered Overwatch, and sort of that took me on my path. And I really enjoyed that, but I never came back to League of Legends. And it was only through at the time, this was about halfway through the period of running Goa, and before Pentanet.gg was a thing, that I discovered a local esports high school network here called Flak Test, and we ran high school esports tournaments in League of Legends, and that was my real insight into the game. But one thing you learn over the years is that if you don't know something, there are people out there who do know that thing. And so what I've seen it as is my job to go, all right, let's find the best, let's recruit the best, let's put together an amazing team that can do all of the things that we need it to do to work competitively in this space. Let's bring them together, let's support them, let's do everything that we can to give them everything that they need. And then of course there's the team. And the team, the guys, they know their thing. They know their stuff. They came to us at the beginning of the year. Three of them, Pabu, Praedyth, and Biopanther, three of them were with us last year. And they came to us at the beginning of the year and they said, we really believe that we can win the LCO split one and we can go on to MSI and we can do some damage. And we were like, okay, well, we trust you boys because we know you very well. Bring on your team. You say you're going to do this, just commit to it. We'll give you what you need. And it helps having known them for a while. And sure enough, they've delivered. But geez, I think all of us have been blown away with which, the degree that they have actually delivered, because they've gone above and beyond. 13-1 in the regular season, then breaking out of groups. But for me, the thing that I've done as a leader for the team is I've gone, I don't know League of Legends to the degree that these guys do, but what I do know is I do know how to lead a team. I do know how to create roles for people, and I do know how to make sure that they stick to those roles and remain consistent. And I do know how to support people. So whenever the guys have needed support, day or night, they only need to pick up the phone. That's when I pick up the phone on the other end and talk them through things that they need to talk about. And when it comes to their content and executions as well, and just standard life, I mean, 36 years old and a wife and a couple of kids and, a few jobs along the way, you learn a few things about life, and they're quite young kids. So when they have some issues and they need to talk about it, they come to me to sort of get some things off their chest. So, yeah, I guess emotional support to a degree.
Have you seen much growth in the esports scene in Australia during your time kind of being in the thick of it? Because I know that it's always been maybe like a little bit, we've been a little bit on the back foot in terms of just having the population and having the infrastructure as well to allow competitors to be competing on a global, level playing field.
I've seen growth. I've also seen contraction. But I think the contraction was necessary. When I first started in esports, one of the things that I noticed, it didn't take long to notice, was that a lot of esports organizations and the Australian market in general was actually quite overvalued and overhyped. There was a lot of, there's money to be made in esports, because in Australia, they're looking across to much more mature regions like Europe and North America, where esports has been around for a very long time. But also on top of that, you've got your populations in the hundreds of millions. You've got 400 million people in North America who are consuming the product. So obviously there's going to be the level of investment from commercial brands and viewership and audiences and revenues and, ad revenue and this, that, and the other to sustain things like high wages, bigger contracts, much more resourcing into organizations. I mean, that's why, Oceania has never broken out of world like group stages before, and how it's been a region where people have given it a big thumbs down in terms of why are you even here, because we just aren't resourced like your big teams, like your Liquids and your Mad Lions and all of those are. But the beauty about it is, because we've had that contraction in the last couple of years, we're probably at a much more realistic level of value for the Australian market. And because of that, now you're having much more professional outfits come in and go, we're going to invest in the space because we know exactly the kind of return on investment our dollar is going to make. And they're not afraid to invest in the space because they can forecast that as well. We've put a fair bit of money into professional League of Legends here in Australia in the last couple of years. But I mean, to resource the boys enough where they can go overseas, compete at a tournament like that, and do something groundbreaking like they have done in the last 24 hours, the return has been worth it 10 times over.
I know you've been handing out some pretty great advice as well during your time as a mentor for Lenovo Legion's apprenticeship program. But would you be able
Yeah,
to
that was
share,
good fun.
a little bit of that advice here too for people that are looking to get into the games industry but just aren't sure where to start?
The first thing that always comes to mind is consistency. A lot of people, and I've been guilty of this as well in years gone by, that people say I'm going to do something, and they get into it and they're energized and they're motivated, and they do it for the first week, and then they do it for the second week, and then they'll miss a week, and they'll do it after that, and then they'll miss another week. And through the work that you've done, this media, we're not your traditional broadcasters who people know they can set an appointment 6 till 9 weekdays on Mix and know that we're going to show up, or 7:30 weeknights on Channel 7 and know that the show is going to be there. If you miss a stream or you miss a broadcast, as pressurized an environment as it is, there's a chance that in such a saturated industry, people will find somebody else to go and watch or somebody else to listen to. And sure, there's every chance that might come back, but there's also every chance that it might not. So consistency is a really big one on my part because things are built over time. The whole Rome wasn't built in a day. I know it's a cliche, but if you remain consistent, then you look back after 12 months and you go, wow, have a look at how far we've come. Check out the growth. I mean, look, there's so many tidbits. Another thing is don't look at your neighbor, focus on what you're doing. A little while ago, Steph, I went through and I unfollowed a heap of people on social media because I found that I was getting too caught up in what everybody else was doing while I was flicking through my feed.
I did the same
Ra-
thing.
oh, it's
Best thing I ever did.
right, and it's shocking, like how you can get caught up in what everybody else is doing. You go, oh my God, they just pulled that sponsorship. Oh, they just won that match. How come they're getting that? And they don't have as many followers as me because they're probably remaining consistent and putting their effort into the right places and their energy, right? Like, so stop looking at what everybody else is doing and start focusing on what it is that you're doing. And one other thing, and this is probably one of the most important pieces of advice that I've ever been given. When I first got into radio and got back to Perth, I had a really awesome discussion with the guy who's now the chief content officer of the Triple M network. He basically runs the Triple M network. And we were sitting at a table across from each other, and he said to me, "What do you want?" And I was in my sort of late 20s. And I said, I want to be famous and rich, and I want to be the Eddie Maguire of radio in Perth. and he looked at me and he said, "You will fail." And I was like, "Whoa, that was like a big bucket of water to the face, like someone slapped me across the head with a salmon." And I was like, "Why?" And he goes, "Because you're doing it for the wrong reasons." And he was so right. And from that moment, I shifted my direction to just enjoying the content. And because I shifted my direction to just enjoying the content, I started to find the quality in the content again and my passion for what it was that I was doing and just creating awesome things. And when you rediscover that or discover that, and you build that passion again and you start creating these amazing things just because you love doing it, people around you pick up on the energy and they pick up on the vibe and they pick up on the quality of the execution as well. And because of that, if you then add in consistency and then you add in energy and motivation and drive and stuff, you start making money and a career out of it, right? Because you are consistent and you can consistently deliver at a high level. You're someone who's been in content for a long, long time. You know that organic content is the stuff that breaks through. That's the stuff where when you're on that screen and you're laughing and you're having a great time and you're enjoying yourself. And I've seen you guys on Back Pocket, like you've done a whole host of awesome things over the course of your career, but they take that energy on. It's exciting, you know what I mean? It's that passion that drives people as well. So be confident in your work, and I'm not talking to you about this because you've got that in spades, but people watching this, be confident in your work and remain consistent and bring that effort and energy and do it for the right reasons, and you will succeed. You'll get to the place that you need to be.
I think that's great, honest advice, and I wholeheartedly agree. I guess my final question for you, Pete, is what's next for you? Not that you need any more on your plate, but do you have any particular milestones that you're hoping to reach, or areas of the industry that you'd like to work in?
A guest appearance on Back Pocket would be awesome.
Okay.
Um,
Noted.
I don't know. When I started sort of shifting direction and focusing on what I was doing now, I left a lot of the, let's look ahead to the future behind.
Sure.
That was another thing. I would get caught up in where am I going to be in, a year's time, in 3 years' time, in 5 years' time. I really don't know. We're currently building a production studio for Game on Australia here in Perth, in an industrial area, because we want to level up the quality of the content and create like a little home base. I guess, yeah, for me, I think I just want to keep creating awesome things, whether that be organizations or whether that be content or whether that be, the next generation of talent. I just want to keep creating awesome things. And I think if I can do that every day or every week or something like that, then I'll be happy. Yeah, I'll be in a good place.
Well, Pete, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, dude.
Pleasure's been mine. Hex, as always.
Thank you so much to Lenovo Legion as well for supporting the series. Pete, thanks so much for chatting to me. I'm excited to see all of the stuff that you're up to in future.
Anytime, mate. Same goes back your way as well. Looking forward to the next chat.
See ya.